Welcome one and all back to the role-playing channel, and I do apologize about the delay since the last video, but I'm going to be going over some more of what happened in the Age of Redemption lore. So, let's go ahead and start off with India. India entered the war in 2028 after the Russian and Chinese embarrassment of their defeat in and around Posen in Poland. During the war, Posen kind of turned into the Przemysl of the Third World War. Przemysl, for those who do not know, is a major battle in World War I that basically determined what side the Italians would join on, as well as a bunch of other minors. After the Austrian army in Przemysl surrendered, Italy joined the war against the Central Powers, and at that point, basically, World War I continued on. Italians got massacred, but it was a turning point in the war itself. And Posen did the same thing. So after the Battle of Posen, the EUF offered the Indians the region of Kashmir, which is about right up here, in returns for their participation. Now, Kashmir is a disputed region between China, Pakistan, and India. India was good with this, Pakistan and China not so much. So, what the Indians did is they invaded Pakistan. They managed to just completely overwhelm them with the sheer size of their force, as well as the Anzac support meant that they both had the numbers and the superior training compared to their army. They devastated Pakistan so much that it was unable to field another full-size army for the remainder of the war. And after that, China invaded in the north as well. They went through Bangladesh and Nepal, or tried to. In Nepal, they were stalled by the snow, because that's where the good old Himalaya mountains are. Kind of hard to pass over. So, the war raged on for 15 years, neither side really getting an upper hand, so on and so forth, until the battle for New Delphi took place, after a long campaign to eventually advance. In that battle, 200,000 Indian and Anzac troops fought a force of 200,000 Chinese, 30,000 Russians, 50,000 Vietnamese, 10,000 exiled Pakistani forces, 100,000 Cambodian soldiers, and all together about 390,000 men. The battle lasted for 6 months, but eventually they were lost. After the loss of their capital, the Indian troops were demoralized, and soon after the rest fell. Luckily for the New Zealand and Australian troops that were stationed there, they were able to evacuate and get their troops back into, or managed to pull them out, and they were relocated into Africa, where they helped turn the tide and turn Africa into the first full-on continent to fall during the war. Aside from that, let's go ahead and pop over to Japan. In Japan, they, just like today's timeline, extremely technologically advanced, extremely devoted, extremely proficient. At the beginning of the war, this was their main advantages. This is what they were good at. They also had a good-sized navy. However, the main problem that they ran into was the fact that they were dealing with Russia, China, which both have nearly unlimited numbers of men. Additionally, Taiwan and Vietnam, Cambodia, and most of South Eastern Asia was also pro-China and pro-Russia. So in 2032, they were invaded by a combined Russian and Chinese force numbering 300,000 strong. 400,000 strong. This army was defeated. It was heavily battered. The Japanese army didn't have much less. The U.S. task force and Navy helped to establish this victory, as well as Philippine troops as well, who are also pro-U.S. After that, an invasion was launched on the Philippine Islands, which sent the U.S. Sixth Fleet down and took them out of defensive positions of Japan, as well as the Philippine troops being withdrawn to their homeland to fight the fight there. With that information being said, the Russians and Chinese and Vietnamese also put together a force of an additional 200,000 men to reinforce the surviving 100,000 men in Japan and continued the assault. They managed to successfully take the Japanese islands at great cost. All said and done, they lost 700,000 men to take Japan, but they were victorious. But this wasn't quite the end for Japan. They continued fighting throughout the war, and only in 2043 were they officially out of the war due to their last surviving fleet being sunk just off the coast of Panama during the Battle of Panama. Vietnam and Cambodia were kind of similar fate. Vietnam managed to, the Vietnamese managed to contribute 200,000 soldiers to the war. Cambodians, 300,000. They both entered. A third died in India, a third died in Japan, and the remaining third were trying to figure out how to deal with the rebellions and the burning ruins of their home countries after the US bombed and bombarded them to dust. So they were, after 2034-ish, they were mostly left to contributing economic support to the Russians and Chinese. And I think that covers most of Asia. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and cover Malaysia, pro-US. They joined on the US side, and they managed to keep independent throughout the war, although they were heavily bombed. There was not much left at the end. Java, Taiwan, they went pro-China. Papua New Guinea, not really a whole lot there, but they were independent. I'd actually say they're probably the most independent group in the entire world. Australia, New Zealand, obviously pro-UF. Who am I forgetting? FAM. They're pro-EUF, but faced by China and everyone else at the outbreak of the war 2028, they were quickly overwhelmed and they just really lost instantly. They just couldn't hold it back. And I think that's about it. Once again, remember, click like and subscribe, and I hope you all have a nice rest of your evening.